Upon finishing Goodbye Despair, one thing really hit me that I never thought in the first game, and it was just that these characters this time around really just aren't as good. Now, I know that I've already lost a lot of people right there, but please allow me just a moment of your time to explain. So without further ado, welcome to the many mistakes of the Danganronpa 2 cast. Let's hit it! In the first game, there were so many characters that I wanted to spend my free time with that I didn't know where to start. Do I pick my childhood friend Takaya to learn more of our past? Which I'm glad I did, to be honest, because of how short you have to do it, as well as the fact that she lulls you into a false sense of security, but it also adds a lot if you do it in time. It's like they expected you would. Do I try to learn more about the Tagami family name? And honestly, he was such a jerk that I couldn't help but be interested. Do I see why Toko is on edge so much? Do I spend time with the gruff Mondo who shows signs of something more underneath? Do I want to see how Asahina stays so upbeat? Do I want to help Chihiro come out of their shell? Find out the mystery behind Hiyoko. The only two that really didn't do much for me were Leon and Hifumi, and even then they were okay in their free time. You get the point, plenty of characters to unravel. And I can actually believe that they were friends before the events of the first game, unlike the cast of the second. When 2 started, despite warming up to a select few as time went on, which may have been intentional, I can only think of one person I instantly wanted to know more of after seeing the class of freaks at the start of the game, and that was Fat Byakuya. Because who wouldn't after playing 1? Most of the characters after the first few interactions didn't do much for me, resulting in me going to sleep a couple times just to get the story to carry on. None of them really felt like they had any unique identifiers that made them stand out, and some of them were so annoying that I couldn't wait for them to be gone. Some grew on me, but some really didn't. I understand that the game is longer than the first, so things may take longer to develop, but for a lot of characters that never happened. I thought Pico looked cool, but she never really did much during the interactions. And Hiyoko is a classic case of misdirection of looking cute and innocent but actually being quite mean, however showing signs that it could be an act. And Nagito? Oh, don't worry, we'll get to him. So with that being said, I'd like to split this video up into a few sections. The final 5, Nagito, Chiaki, and the rest. Now, I won't be using any of the free time development in the discussion of these characters, nor the anime for that matter, because supplemental material that you may not even see until your 4th playthrough of School Mode isn't a way to tell the characters' main stories. Characters in this game, and many in the last game, had arcs that you would naturally experience through the story, with extra in their free time mode, and it's only fair to expect the same from the sequel. I liked all of the survivors in the first game, and given how that game went, you could kind of tell near the end of the game who was going to make it. The first rule of Danganronpa is to not get attached to anyone, I know this, but those characters had a lot of effort written into them that I just wanted them to make it, and it just seemed like it'd be a shame just to have one of them die suddenly. However, with characters in this game, I wasn't too bothered. There was only one real death that made me think, that was a shame, and with many others just seeming like poor or confused choices. However, it does keep you on your toes to not have the final survivors seemingly be so obvious. The survivors, or the final 5 as they've been called, are honestly pretty weak this time around, and there's only one I can say that I outright actually liked. The characters are lined up in order of how much I like them honestly. So let's begin. Fuyuhiko is the only character I can say that feels like he deserves to be a final survivor. He goes through a character arc of staying away from everyone for a reason, but then calming down and opening up after Chapter 2's tragic events. He shows to be a trustworthy, reliable member of the group that cares about others and is ready to reach out. Chapter 2 is pretty much written exclusively to further the development of himself and Pico, and all this happens right before she's about to be executed. The idea that he managed to work out the secret of the game before anyone else makes me think that Monokuma had a hand in it. I don't know why he's suddenly so good at a video game he seemingly would have no interest in, but maybe the topic of the game caught his attention for obvious reasons. If Chiaki or, I don't know, Gundham beat the game first, why would they care about the information the game rewarded them with? Despite not being a suspect in case 1, I will say that I fell for it. When I saw how rude he was, I couldn't wait for him to get his comeuppance. But little did I know he'd end up being one of the best characters in the game. Sometimes the way he acted at the start with all the cussing feels a bit forced, and that's because it kind of was. Upon seeing some of the earlier scenes again after beating the game, you can see that there's more thoughtfulness underneath. And then when he falls for some simple jokes, it shows the facade slipping.
Stop calling me baby gangsta!
Contrary to the title of this video, I really don't have much bad to say about him at all. He's probably one of the only well-rounded characters in this entire game that doesn't have a glaring flaw to their character and will be at home in the first game. Probably an excellent place to start if I'm honest. Oh, but don't worry, there's plenty more to get to. And we all agree that he's the one at the end of the game that's revealed to put Junko's eye in his head, right? Akane, a character who was originally planned to be much more with being Hajime's rival, is a mostly one-note character that feels like a poor reimagining of Asahina. She's sporty, both like to eat, and has an even more exaggerated chest that it feels like a parody. Either that's a huge coincidence, or someone over there has a type. And hey, I ain't complaining. I've heard people say she's supposed to be like Goku, as she's the same person at the end as she was at the start, but that feels like a poor excuse, and for a few reasons. 1, she isn't written well enough to carry that trope. 2, she constantly makes the same mistakes over and over and seemingly learns nothing from seeing her friend nearly die in front of her because she does the exact same thing again, whilst also attacking someone else in broad daylight in front of everyone. In general, she just lacks impulse control. Thirdly, any type of further character progression she would have had by characters like Fuyuhiko reaching out to her and being her friend just gets sidelined by her making baby gangster joke, and it just goes nowhere. Goku at least reacts to the situations around him, he doesn't completely ignore it like she does. She is a funny character, and she routinely made me laugh, but it's all jokes related to her boobs or sex stuff, and by the end of the game, when you're on Chapter 5's trial, it really just derails things. Because at this point, you just want to get to the bottom of what's going on, and she's just joking around. Again. Her relationship with Nekomaru seems reminiscent of Sakura and Asahina from the first game, but it's in no way as developed or as meaningful as that. When Nekomaru shows up after being absent due to her causing him injury, she immediately attacks Monokuma again and he gets hit. He doesn't get severely injured this time because of his makeover, but the fact that she did it again was ridiculous. Also, despite the fact that I shared her sentiment, her attacking Nagito in broad daylight in front of everyone and very nearly killing him could have resulted in everyone on the island dying, including herself. People say Chiaki slapping her was out of character, but honestly it was deserved. It shows that even a reserved person like Chiaki who exists to help the group has her limits. She prefers to fight instead of being a gymnast, but her design really doesn't accommodate either of these. She has a ridiculously small skirt and a shirt she routinely looks like she's going to burst out from. I think she should have had some more muscle tone or a sports bra or a tracksuit or something to hammer the point home, so she definitely needs a sports bra then. Perhaps this complaint is pedantic, but as is the case with some other designs, she really doesn't have anything that sticks out like Asahina's red sweater would. It appears like I'm not the only one who thinks this either about her design. And if you have even DSP Gaming calling out her design, well then you've got some problems.
Yo!
Oh my god! Yeah, but it's horseshit, and here's why. I actually said this in Danganronpa 1 as well. In order to be the ultimate athlete, you cannot have big breasts. It's not possible. Because big breasts throw your weight on your balance off, and they hurt.
And from looking at the cast of 3, they have similar issues. Now, I said I wouldn't use these, but just to illustrate my point, her free time events would suggest that there's more under the surface to her. But due to this being optional content and never hinted at all in the game otherwise, some people would never see it, so in the main story she's just a funny piece of eye candy. She suffers greatly from having her original purpose taken out and made into a general game feature of every character being able to argue back, and has nothing in its place. So overall, having a character that doesn't have a character arc or any real impact besides boob jokes be a final survivor after about 35 hours of game time just feels like a wasted slot.
Some hot ass artwork right there. Holy shit, look at that titties! Oh yeah! I love it!
Now, the word I'd planned to describe Sonia with actually applies to all three that are left, and they're boring! Oh my god, they're so incredibly dull, but for now, let's just focus on Hajime. Hajime is a pretty weak protagonist, and no amount of late game plot twists really ever help alleviate or recontextualize this. He has no real connection with anyone, his relationship with Chiaki is so poorly developed, he doesn't uncover anything about the mystery on his own, he doesn't even really seem like a thorn in the mastermind's side until right at the end of the game, when we finally learn something about him, and he goes Super Saiyan and wins the day just because he felt like it. He very much is a passive observer right up until the very end, and I honestly don't like him much. You know, not like that was painfully obvious or anything. The characters learn that if they press the final button, they will submit to Junko until they decide that they don't want to lose to her, press it, and win anyway, just because they felt like it. Besides the fact it's a video game and your main player character is going to be good at a task for arbitrary reasons, Makoto felt like he was good at debates because he was the ultimate lucky student and had luck on his side, which just felt like it worked in-universe. Hajime, however, being a reserve student and somehow being great at debates and deductive reasoning only works in the setting of it being a video game. Which might be an unfair criticism, but when compared with the first game in the way that I personally thought they handled it, this was a step down. I know it's there to show that anyone can be good at something without a talent, but that is kind of antithetical to the entire point of the series, as well as why he had the Kamakura project done on him in the first place. Not to mention he had Nagito, sometimes, and Chiaki helping him, so he had two helpers. Also, the reveal of him just being a reserve student felt very underwhelming. It felt like Nagito was lying, but when it was revealed to be the truth, I just felt like, wow, okay then I guess. I also really did not like that he didn't even attempt to save Chiaki. He just kept repeating himself over and over and just succumbed to whatever the group decided without much of a second thought. If their relationship is supposed to be one of the main driving forces of this game, then it fell so flat. There's also a very strange scene in this game with a flashback to him being ridiculed for being a reserve student, and it comes just as quickly as it goes and it never really gets built up upon. I guess it's just supposed to show a glimpse into his psyche, but for a series that really focuses on lost memories and what happens before the tragedy, it's oddly skimped over. Especially after what you learn about the Kamakura project at the end of the game. Is it explained in the anime? Sure, but it could have been elaborated on here more. One thing I will say I like is that most of the time he puts his foot down when he sees something he doesn't like and actually stands up for the right thing. He's a perfectly nice guy, even if all I can hear is Adachi when he talks, and I didn't loathe spending 30 hours or so with him, but overall he felt lacking. People really seem to like him, and I honestly just don't know why.
And what does that make, Ketchup?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Sonia is next and just, oh boy. She's a one-joke character that gets strung out right until the end credits. Literally, the joke is that she's supposed to be a prim and proper princess, but is secretly kinky and doing all sorts of things that wouldn't be expected of her, and that's it. She also likes anime and serial killers, but that also plays into the same joke of her liking things that aren't expected. We're told that she has a friendship with Gundham, but it just sort of materialises out of nowhere and he never really seems to interact with her or acknowledge it. It's one-sided. It's just Sonia sitting in his shadow emulating what he does because it's a haha funny joke that she likes someone we wouldn't expect her to, and Kazuichi gets cucked. Her design is pretty average. I really don't have much else to say about her because there's just no material to work with. She's literally just there. She has a can-do attitude and I like her hair, I guess. That's all I've got.
That's boring. You're boring, everybody. Quit boring everyone.
Last, and very much least, the worst offender in the group is Kazuichi Soda, however. Again, he has one joke where he's fawning over Sonia and she ignores him at best and belittles him at worst. That's it for the entire game. Sonia imitating Gundham is a harmless little gag, but Kazuichi is tiresome. It gets really old, stops being funny, and it's kind of sad and creepy honestly. It stops being a little crush and ends up being his whole personality, and seeing someone get rejected over and over again, even as a joke, is just uncomfortable. If she got a restraining order against him, she'd be well within her right. Early on in the game, it seems like it's going to be set up that he and Hajime are going to be bros because Hajime just kind of tags along to the beach date because Kazuichi wanted him to. That seems like some buddy-buddy gag humour right there that would bring them closer together or bring some humour to the situation, but by the time the amusement part comes around, it's all forgotten. Nagito constantly tries to plant doubt in the group by claiming that Hajime is the traitor, but for some reason by the time they enter Strawberry House, Kazuichi just seems to decide to believe it for some reason and actively puts distance between himself and Hajime, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. Especially because he never apologises for it. He never learns anything, very rarely contributes anything noteworthy besides tinkering with a few things here and there. He can be positive like Sonia too, but overall it's just another waste of a slot at the end of the game. Not to mention I got fed up looking at a pretty ugly character design. Pink hair is nice and an opposite of green, but seeing a bright green work suit for most of the runtime was just jarring. He looks somewhat cool when he lets his hair down, but the fact I need to resort to hair in an official render to find something good about him just shows how bad he really is. And the fact I've had to refer to hair twice just to find any positive of the last two characters shows some glaring flaws with this game. So that's the final 5 done. 1 great character, 1 okay character, and 3 bland ones. Now, on to the 2 other heavyweights. Now, Nagito is up next, and it's honestly quite intimidating because he is easily the best written character in this game. Maybe the series. But then that could be my criticism of him. He feels like he had all the energy of the script written into him, that when he dies near the end of the game it feels like such a waste. And it also feels like the game really loses something special there. Nagito is certainly a nuisance in the story, and I can't really decide if I actually like him or not just because of how annoying he really is. But he's certainly iconic. He feels like the driving force for a lot of what happens, and that the story would have gone in a completely different direction if he weren't there. He even has an opening monologue in Chapter 2, and the Chapter 0 reveal has him be a huge part of it as well. Thinking about it realistically, he isn't really in the game that much. One chapter he's locked in a room, in the other he's sick and confined to a bed for a lot of the runtime, and in one chapter he isn't even there. But he has such an overbearing presence that he feels like he's always there. Even when he's dead he still finds a way to show up. Akane was supposed to be more of an antagonistic roadblock to all of Hajime's progress, but with Nagito already existing that role was already filled. And as mentioned, other characters can also rebuttal you from time to time besides her. Remember what I said about how Hajime doesn't uncover any big secret? Well, guess who does? Nagito does. So much so that you actually play as him for a significant portion of one of the chapters in a very unique sequence where you learn a lot about what is going on. It's almost like at every opportunity he takes the spotlight away from Hajime to where you even play as him. The roller coaster that this guy takes the player and the characters on is extremely complicated and very well written. He starts off as a simple enough friendly guy, and Hajime even says he's a chill guy, but as chapter 1 unfolds you can see the pressure of the situation getting to him and how it affects his belief system. I've never been a fan of the character trope of someone just magically hiding their Lee crazy side until it's plot convenient, but for him it actually makes sense, because he has so many conflicting opinions on hope and despair and how they connect and reflect with each other that it just makes him crack. And it's actually very original and unique and might take players a few hours or maybe even a replay to understand what he means. Not to mention that he changes yet again when he learns more facts at the end of the game that destroy his beliefs to the core because they all ended up being what he hated most. It's honestly quite odd how much effort he has put into him and how much layers he has compared to everybody else, but my god does he lay it on thick with the hope and despair talk. He goes on and on about the same thing over and over again, monologuing for minutes at a time about the same stuff, and it's like, okay, I get it dude. I guess it's just typical anime melodrama, but on the flip side, putting the gun to his head was a badass and great use of his talent. He's an excellently written character, but that, again, is my issue with him. He seems to have all the energy written into him, so much so that it nearly makes the entire rest of the cast very weak by comparison. It's almost like, hey, save some character development for the rest of us dude. He does, however, apparently have a terminal illness, but I don't really remember that ever being mentioned outside of the anime. It's more implied, if anything. His death is a shame, but not everyone can live, and it throws a curveball in right at the 11th hour. It also drives the story forward to its natural conclusion, and shows even when he's dead, he is still manipulating the events. His death was him taking his beliefs to the extreme to finally find who the traitor was. The fact that I've been so positive on him may shock a few of you, and that this section is shorter than may be expected, but any more analysis of him would require its own video. He honestly feels like his own entity, like a character from another game, or how a character is aware of his own place as a fictional character in a story. With all the development he has, it's really no wonder why he's so popular. I know why he isn't, but he may as well be the main character of the game.
Those who are born with worth already, and everybody else. Feed me.
Shut up! Oh my god, I don't care!
Now, Chiaki is a very interesting character because you're clearly supposed to like her. And for the most part I do, but I don't think the script really gave her that much to do, and ultimately, her fate felt very unfair. She's a cute character with a very relaxing voice and funny little quirks that some will argue the anime undid, but that's kind of all she has going for her a lot of the time. She felt like just a fan service character because she's a cute gamer girl that makes cute noises and poses every now and then.
Hey.
She's very clearly supposed to be the Hiyoko to Hajime's Makoto, but their relationship is nowhere near close to that level. Friendship or debate. There's only one real scene of any hinted romance or deeper relationship between the two, and it's later revealed that the only reason that scene exists in the first place is to poorly set up Chiaki as the traitor. It's the scene before the final dead room. There's another character I'll talk about later that I felt had a way more realistic relationship with Hajime, and in such a shorter amount of time too. I also find it slightly odd that she also fills in as a class trial assist character just like Hiyoko did, when we already have Nagito in the game. Lore-wise it makes sense because she's there to guide the characters to their goal, but for most of the game she feels like someone that's oddly good at deductions for no reason. She even says as much. She always just appears when she's needed and no amount of video game experience can make up for it. It's all of her AI doing the work. Maybe that's the point. Her ultimate skill is kind of a fourth wall break. Nagito is an oddball that I don't think anyone behind the scenes of the in-game universe could have expected, but already having a smart character in the cast with Makoto's ultimate skill already filled that role. We didn't need another. Byakuya also helped Makoto in the first game, but like Nagito, he felt like a hindrance most of the time and not someone to consistently rely on. Hey, it's a perfect fit. Hiyoko helped, but she had her secrets, whereas Nagito always seemed more focused on helping whoever had more hope or despair in that moment. Even if he is a pain, he felt like he would be the helper of this game. Chiaki just felt like a weird add-on, even if she is supposed to be the designated helper. The first game seemingly had 2 trial helper characters, but I didn't even think about it until I played this game. So my point is that Chiaki just felt out of place for being a helper, which is what got me thinking about this topic in the first place, and mentioning it in the Hajime section. There may be 2 in each game, but their dynamics are completely different. The twist of her being the traitor really does not add up to much in-game at all. Besides a lot of headcanons and implications of her being an AI, like her falling asleep instantly is like her AI buffering, and things like that, nothing about her being an AI puts any of her past actions into any sort of new context besides that one scene, which yet again only exists as a plot twist. It's sort of a meta plot twist meant more for the characters because she's actually the only good person who is deemed a traitor by Monokuma because he sees her that way. That's the only way this traitor thing works, and I don't even know if they understood it. There's so much going on at the end of the game with so many new terms thrown at you in quick succession that her betrayal completely got swept under the rug as they were trying to deal with all the other terms and past characters coming back. I will say that the twist is handled well. I, and assume others, just assumed Nagito was full of nonsense and that he was lying, but in actuality he was telling the truth in a warped way. One stupid complaint I hear about her is that her outfit doesn't portray a gamer. What is she supposed to wear? You know, what is a gamer supposed to wear? A onesie with game covers all over it? That's an actual response I saw once. I think the Gallagher-inspired hairpin is a neat touch, and that's all that's needed to be honest. She just has general school uniform otherwise. Her hair is unique and identifying characteristic that makes her stand out when she's drawn in a different style. She's a cute schoolgirl nerd, and that's it. Why doesn't Sonia wear a princess outfit? Why doesn't Akane wear more appropriate attire? Oh wait, that one would make sense. Oh wait, I know. Underpants and a sweat-stained t-shirt? There are Danganronpa guessing games where people guess what the ultimate is by how they look, which is a sign of good character design, but I don't know what you're supposed to do with a gamer at the end of the day. She's just a cute girl. The ideal woman, apparently. As I said before, people complain that she slapped Akane, but it needed to happen in that moment. She's put her foot down other times too, and she can have a bit of sass at times.
Too much info.
I do like Chiaki a lot, even if I can see the glaring flaws in her character. I've grown to like her more as I've been making this video. Whenever I see her now, I think of her as one of the only characters in this game that has any depth. She's supposed to be set up to be tragically killed off, and it is. She's tragic. Yet another decent character that had very little to do and was killed off right before the finish line as soon as she gets to do something after 30 hours. And her final scenes in the anime are downright heartbreaking. With all the screen time these characters get in this game as opposed to the first, they really do not make the most of their time at all. It's like the writers thought that just making a cute girl exist and be a gamer was enough to make people like her, and for the most part, I guess it worked. I mean, hey, most people playing would want a gamer GF after all. She's a character done dirty by the story twice over. It's a real shame.
Rise up, gamer boys. It's time to get your gamer girl bathwater.
Now, for the rest of the characters. I'll simply cover them in the order of my reference image. And honestly, it really does feel like the rest, because many of them feel like just an afterthought. So next up is Gundham. Originally a character that got old very quickly, honestly became one of the more respected characters of the group, who proved to be a resourceful ally. He starts off being annoying by talking in a very verbose manner, but quickly he becomes an actual very funny bit of comedic relief. Similarly to Fuyuhiko, the only thing that I find a bit ridiculous is that he apparently not only cleared the final dead room at all, but also well enough to get access to something special to take out his target. Unless his Dark Davers of Destruction had some voodoo magic that could solve logic puzzles, I find it difficult to believe that he passed that room at all. He may have been a killer, and as weird as it is to say, he was a good person deep down, and also fought his target honourably, as they both had an agreement and wouldn't go down without a fight. That is until he socked his hamsters on him to sneakily press the button on Nekomaru's neck. I like to believe that Gundham really did do it to save everyone, even if it took him ages to finally back down in the class trial and being overdramatic, as is his style. But there are theories that he did it just to save his hamsters. Why didn't he go and kill Nagito because of how much of a nuisance he was, or even himself is another question. Not to mention that the characters started to suspect that the events going on in this game mirrored the first a little too well. So they threw a curveball into the mix because of what happened in chapter 4 of the first game. There's probably some rule about actively doing suicide anyway. A fine character with a unique look, but it's honestly just kind of there.
What the fuck does that say?
Pekoyama is, as I mentioned earlier, a character that I found instantly striking with her dark crimson eyes, black outfit, and her her carrying a weapon always struck me as slightly odd because I thought it wouldn't be allowed, but then I realised the game is about murdering people, so why wouldn't it be? It's pretty cute and silly seeing her have the sword even as a baby. She's a very stoic character and keeps very quiet and isolated in the early story, but there's enough going on that you can infer there's more beneath the surface. There's very subtle hints that she's important because Fuyuhiko seemingly insults every girl on the island except her, which is something I didn't even pick up on until later. It's definitely something you're looking out for more on a second run through. She has some awkward moments too that juxtapose her steely exterior, which are funny because of this. Seeing someone so confident suddenly have bathroom issues she's shy of is a cute bit of character development. It took me by surprise. Her name as well is just kind of fun to say. She is, however, the lesser half of a whole. No disrespect to her, but what she goes through is all to further the development of Fuyuhiko and to fundamentally change him drastically for the rest of the game's runtime. It could be criticised that it's a female being sacrificed to further develop a male. I'm sure someone said something like this before, but she doesn't go down without a fight. She fits the theme of this game, as I found many of this game's suspects more difficult to work out. She should have just gotten rid of those bottles another way though.
Someone tried to flush plastic game jewel cases.
In a game series that has characters lose their memories, it's an interesting dynamic to have two characters still know each other before the killing game starts. As is the case with many of these characters, she gets killed right when she's finally given the time to do something. The Sparkling Justice add-on was quite strange. She does it to shine suspicion on herself, but anyone that remembers anything at all about the first game, your first thought is that it's going to be a Genocide Jack callback, which this game flirts with quite a lot. It was, however, just a red herring in this game, one that I think could have been done without. It existed just to draw more attention to herself as the culprit and take suspicion away from Fuyuhiko, but in game it's worked out pretty fast to be a lie, mostly because of the tired joke of Sonia liking random things.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
Ibuki is certainly a character that exists, yeah. Sorry, I just don't have much to say. She has a great design that juxtaposes with her personality, but that's kind of the point. She looks great, but her entire personality is just lol random XD. And it makes me laugh because it seems like she lacks anything unique because she's even in the same pose as Pico in the reference sheet that I'm using. Like with most other characters, she is funny, but there's other characters that also fill these roles of being funny whilst actually adding something. She has a musical number in the game that more lives up to how she looks, and that's a unique piece of storytelling different from the first game, but that's about it. She does have a serious side she briefly lets out when it's just one-on-one interactions with some people. It shows more depth to her character than she probably wants to let on. But the thing is, there's other characters in this cast that can fill that role too. This may just seem like unfair criticism, but she just sucks. Ironically enough, for someone dealing with loud music all the time, her hearing is excellent, which does come in handy very early on. Probably a bit of meta-humour there. However, besides that, unless there's something I'm forgetting, anything she can do, any of the other characters can do better. I wanted to like Ibuki because she looked cool and she was fun to be around. But besides chapter 3 making her eerie with her affliction,
What the whoa, Jesus, dude, she looks fucking creepy. Dude, she looked really fucking creepy right there. Like a zombie walking through the hallway.
I just don't think there's much to work with there. She's a character, she exists, and she died.
I don't like death metal, because death metal sounds like this. It's noise, okay?
Nekomaru is an interesting character because his giant muscles are a contrast to the fact that his ultimate ability probably involves a lot more motivational speeches and strategy as opposed to raw strength being used. However, that can also lead him into being a hands-on instructor that gets stuck into his training, as well as a former athlete that went out on top and decided to become a coach, as he would have great experience. It could also have something to do with his beta design. More on that in a moment. There's no real glaring fault with him as a character. He's funny, open-minded, comforting, and a good instructor. The fault with him lends more to the fact that he gets written out of the story for an entire chapter and is the only character in the series thus far to do so. Comes back and then instantly dies. It adds some drama as to whether or not he's actually coming back, and his return is a unique moment, but it's also just kind of like, ta-da! Fuyuhiko allegedly was supposed to be the one that got turned into a robot, which is funny when you consider the beta design of Nekomaru and Fuyuhiko seemingly look to have been swapped, with Nekomaru being skinny and small, and the gangster looking a bit more stereotypical. This must have been an early-ish change, however, because of all the baby gangster jokes Akane does. However, he was not turned into a robot because the devs believed it would cheapen the emotional impact of the previous chapter. The shit jokes from him are so childish, and it's literally just him saying a word in a funny way, but it gets me every single time. I also like that his presence is still felt near the end of the game because of Minimaru, and even then, he still says shit. He shows a big comedic side at first, but has a lot more thoughtful moments, especially with Akane, which is doubly annoying because it seems like he's putting in all the work in the duo. He gets oddly serious before his short departure talking about it, and I really wondered where that came from, but it just shows there's more going on there, and he seems to have a deeper relationship with her and her training than she does with him. His design also has some unique flair with what looks like lightning around his eyes. I've had a few people ask me what that is, and I just think it's supposed to be similar to what you see in anime when a character gets serious and lightning effects are all on the screen, or when someone moves their glasses up. He's a nice character to have around, but strangely underused and in a very unique way too. He has more to him than other characters in the cast, but it doesn't get touched upon as well as it could do. Having a character be absent for an entire chapter because he may or may not have died, just to bring him back and kill him off anyway, just made me question what the point of it all was. TeruTeru is the definition of a gag character if ever I've seen one. He routinely says outlandish things that really surprise me that they made it into the game at all, but is also oddly progressive in his own way, as he doesn't seem to care about the gender of the person he's attempting to flirt with. He has a friendly exterior, but then the jokes come out. Despite all the jokes, He actually does do things for his fellow classmates, like actually using his cooking skills for them. He is pretty unique when compared to the rest of the cast, both visually and personality, and to be honest, is actually very memorable because of this, much more so than even most of the final 5. However, whilst funny, I was kind of glad he wasn't in the game for too long, just because it was getting old, and him continually doing that would get creepy, like Kazuichi being a simp. He claims he killed the imposter to frame Nagito, but also that the intended target was Nagito, which already brings into question his credibility, but both of these would result in either his death or everyone else's. The trial would go on forever if his intention was just to get Nagito out of the way and stop the killing game from happening. His desire to frame everyone else so he could leave came from a place of wanting to find out what happened to his mother, which shows more of a caring side to him that hadn't been there at first, but his actions are hardly noble. Don't start to make me feel sorry for the pervert at the 11th hour, please. I fell for the bait though, because I just assumed Nagito did it when all of the characters were saying who was the closest to the table where the victim died. I did like how this case played out. It was very smartly done. He may be a creep, but he's going to be one of the characters from this game that you actually remember, to be honest. He wasn't around long enough to do anything too horrendous, but you can see how it would wear thin if he was around longer, with this being his only gimmick, and had no development or something. Probably worked out for the best, honestly. Accidentally based, I guess.
Hey, who's that handsome guy? Hello, 911 emergency. There's a handsome guy in my house. Oh, wait a second, cancel that. It's only me.
Oh boy. Well, we're finally here. Mikan is definitely one of the more interesting characters in this game, being something of a sleeper hit. She starts off not much more than a fan service character of someone desperately trying to get attention, approval and sympathy from everyone else, to ending up being one of the best characters in the game. She ends up being the focus so subtly that it snuck up on me. I never for a moment suspected her, even though it should be obvious that her behaviour in Chapter 3 is suspicious. She started off annoying because she's very obviously an anime trope of the shy girl making a bunch of cute noises, talking cute and fan service shots. The constant crying and self-deprecation got old very fast, but the fan service shots weren't too overplayed if I'm honest. As assumed by Hiyoko, her constant falling over into suggestive positions is just to get any kind of attention. I thought the attempt at fan service with her specifically was a bit odd when Akane and Chiaki exist, two other forms of very different types of fan service, but it does play into her backstory. She's very useful, as with her ultimate background she can do autopsies on the bodies to help better understand how they died. It's genuinely a better insight that these characters have to better understand their situation that the characters in the first game did not have. It also brings up the point that people keep her around for her talent, not because they enjoy being around her, and it's just kind of upsetting, to be honest. I never really questioned the bandages she has. I just assumed it was something to make her ultimate stick out more. I don't get people's complaints, but her skimpy, almost plain swimsuit that got complaints in S just struck me as another desire for attention, even if it is really under-designed, with the one she has in this game being better. It got people redesigning again like with Akane. However, it all gets flipped on its head in Chapter 3. The despair disease is just another symptom of this group having to be more coerced into killing each other, as many try to get along this time, but I thought it was slightly odd that Hajime never got sick with it, because of the amount of time he spent in the hospital. Possibly this is all done on purpose, and the only people to get sick were predetermined. I thought the despair disease inflicted you with the opposite of your personality, but it just seemed to be whatever worked for the story, which itself set Mikan up to die. Nagito being forced to lie is weird because it seems like he obfuscated the truth enough as it is, even if it occasionally would let us see to what he actually thinks. However, he was hardly forthcoming with the truth even if he believed in it. See, look how important he is to the story, he keeps showing up in other people's sections. Akane being turned into a coward is a good one, because it is the opposite of her personality. Ibuki being made gullible, alright. It certainly did seem weird for her to take things at face value, but she was hardly a steadfast warrior with an iron-fisted will before this. And Mikan was hardly forgetful, so her having a remembering disease wasn't the opposite, it was deliberately done to cause chaos. Maybe I got that wrong, and it wasn't supposed to be an opposite disease, but that's how it seemed. If it made her more confident, then that I could buy, because that's the opposite of how she usually is. But given how lewd she acts in Chapter 3, as well as most of her despair artwork, maybe this is how she really wants to be. She strikes up a relationship with Hajime during this chapter, and it was honestly really well done. It felt genuine, and that this was going to be the love interest during the game. It's upsetting then that it's nothing more than manipulation by Mikan to get what she wants, after she reverted back to her old self. It was too good to be true. It was such a shame to see, and Hajime was clearly hurt because he didn't say her full name before the execution. Their relationship, even if it ended up being nothing more than a lie, was better written and more genuine than the actual intended love interest storyline in this game. I don't even know how that happened. Even in the final moments of Chapter 3, I actually started to doubt myself if she did kill the two victims or not, because as the other characters mentioned, she doesn't seem like someone that could do this. But then again, that does give her the perfect alibi. There's a lot of issues with this chapter, but the dialogue is not one of them. Leaving out the second murder weapon to never be mentioned again is though. Mikan also leaves a hint as to what is to come by talking about her beloved. Her manipulative behaviour in this chapter even brings into question all the fan service shots from earlier on in the game, because as rightly assumed by Hiyoko, even then she's being very deliberate in her actions to get attention. Even throughout this entire chapter, she feels like she's very much in control of what is going on. She's a very tragic character overall, not having much self-esteem and being insecure to finally finding friends in the academy, to then have them ripped away from her, being used for her talent and having her regain her memories of everything as a remnant of despair. It's just non-stop pain for someone that ultimately just wanted to do good with their ultimate skill. Her eager to please personality allows her to be manipulated, which is a flip side on how she acts in Chapter 3. Having a medic in a game like this is very interesting, and also ripping it away halfway through does make an impact. Again, the despair disease is stupid, and a lot of the chapter is pretty bad, which I don't think is a controversial statement. But her development and relationship with Hajime is a huge highlight, which just makes me all the more sad that it was fake. I don't know if her remembering that she was a remnant of despair would make her upset in itself, or it's coupled with all the memories that she had from before. Because when she was brainwashed in the first instance, you're brainwashed. You're not going to remember anything else. Her name always seemed kind of weird to me because it felt like it was missing something after the end, but I guess that's just me, I suppose. I like how she's in the middle of the characters at the start of the game. Retroactively, it seems like she's quietly important here. But then again, Nagito is also quietly unassuming in the background. I've seen people say that the splash screen of each character in the intro is supposed to show what they're good at or what they're interested in. Based alert. Mikan overall is a very interesting character, and is my favourite from this game. A character that initially is very annoying but very slowly gets built up in the chapter she's going to be killed, and then pulling the rug out from under you. She has more time to be an actual character, not just in the trial, which seems to happen a lot in this game, but also has a huge impact on many involved, and makes you feel guilty for ever being negative towards her in the first place. Thinking of all the ways she could have stayed around after this trial and not be the murderer, but still have her memories, would have been a very interesting curveball in the story. Maybe Monokuma makes it so she can't talk about it, or she doesn't want to talk about it, and then that can go down a whole host of storylines, like her going even more crazy, or having someone kill her because she can't take it anymore, or anything like that. The fact that it's a simulation but someone on the inside of it knows everything about what went on outside is such a great concept that could have been played with more. Everyone else's despair disease seems to just go away when the trial starts, but hers seems to stick around, given how she acts in the trial. Similarly to Fuyuhiko, she seems like the rare character in this game with no real flaw. Maybe that can be a flaw, is that she's too good and her possibilities could have been so much more. However, apparently, she does have some big flaw, but I'm really not seeing it at all.
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
Mahiru is a character I found more surprising than anything else. I like her unique hair and her Raggedy Ann or Wendy aesthetic, and she has a really solid design overall. But she also has a very unique character trait of saying what men and women should be, and how they should act, and so on. This is funny given her tomboy look, but I just find it to be a really unique character trait. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head where someone else has this trait, especially not these days. She's quite strict, and initially comes off as unapproachable, but she definitely wanted to be the mother of the group that made sure everyone was okay. This is mainly seen by her offering to immediately help Hiyoko, who up until that point in the story had been nothing but rude. Hiyoko showed a rare moment of weakness, and Mahiru helped. Hiyoko may cry a lot, but that moment was different. I do, however, think it's very odd how they get shipped together as some sort of best friend duo, because it's literally just a handful of lines to get them talking to each other in the first place. But I think that's just a symptom of a bigger problem with this game, with the characters lacking interpersonal connections, but I'll mention more on this later. It's interesting then that she's wrapped up in a very dark incident in the school's past that resulted in her covering up evidence. There were many characters in that scene, and even if many of them didn't do anything, that's how you do character development. Many people being at a place at one time. A good bit of backstory, different to the first game. It also shows another layer to her character given the action she does to cover things up, perhaps even being a hypocrite to her usual ideals that she puts on others. I love how serious she looks in her splash screen image, like she's actually going to do something. She's stuck up, and initially unapproachable, borderline unlikable, but I think she means well overall. Like she has an issue showing her emotions or wants things to be objectively correct or something like that. Perhaps there's more explanation in her free time, but I didn't find her comments in the story to be too offensive, and she isn't around long enough to do much damage anyway. Like many others, even for characters who are around longer, she has interesting traits, but not much is done with it. Maybe she is the secret 2x2 protagonist after all, perhaps.
Yay! Washing each other! Yay!
Good lord, what is happening in there?
Fat Byakuya, or the ultimate imposter as he later revealed to be as, is the only character who is instantly intriguing the moment you see the intro for the game, because your mind starts racing thinking, how did he get back in here? Why is he acting different? And most importantly, why is he fat? The interesting thing about him is that he actually talks like a reformed Byakuya who regrets his past actions, but it's the imposter talking about himself. During the story, as well as his free time, you get small hints that he wants to reveal something big, but never gets the chance. His free time is actually an addition to his main story, instead of being completely adjacent to it like other characters. You learn a lot about him in the anime, and it makes me wonder if this was all planned from the start, because he plays a huge role in that, especially with a character that doesn't even show up here. And if I were talking about the anime, then this guy would immediately be in the 10 out of 10 absolute GOAT category. Sadly, however, he is ultimately a gag character too, because he died right at the start, and to be honest, I kind of expected it. When I saw him under that table, I just raised my arms thinking, I knew it. It's interesting that his death was basically an accident though. I do think he should have been in the game longer to increase the intrigue about what he was, because the entire time he was on screen I was just thinking, oh my god, can someone explain this already please? And the longer it went on without an explanation would have driven me crazy, and I was already ready to tear my hair out. We could have learned more about him too. Even if he isn't around long, they keep the joke going just long enough for you to really start to question what is going on, especially with the fake out intro. The imposter, unfortunately, obviously doesn't make it to a real trial, and that also just feels like it's another wasted opportunity, or rather they didn't want to put too much effort into something that was just a joke and take away time from other members of the cast, or maybe they didn't know how to. The whole thing seems like it could have gotten messy very quickly if done wrong. It's all ultimately a waste, however, because after you do find out who he is, when you're almost at the end of the game after you've had bomb after bomb dropped on you, his reveal as the ultimate imposter just gets glazed over, and the two characters that do discover it don't really care. I don't even know if they tell anyone else, but I do like that his real name is forever kept a secret. His effect on the characters is felt long after he dies, however, because he's the one that rallies the group together almost instantly to where everyone talks to each other and promises they won't kill. There aren't little pocket factions or rebels like in the first game. I'll talk more about this later, feeling like I've been saying that a lot. A friend of mine pointed out that there's this sound effect that plays whenever he walks, and I can't believe I never noticed it. He appears last in the real opening of the game, and that just seems fitting for some reason. He's also smiling in the real intro as well. If he dies first again in 2x2, I'm gonna laugh, but also be annoyed at the same time.
Now do you remember who you are? What you were meant to do?
Now, I didn't save her for last. It just happened that way, and honestly it worked out quite well given the structure of this video as well as the character in question. But finally, we have Hiyoko Sayonji. Where to even begin with her? She became instantly interesting to me after seeing just how rude she actually was. A complete juxtaposition given her very unassuming and polite exterior. She's one of the few characters that I actually did all the free time stuff for that sort of gave me answers to my questions. She also just seems to kill bugs because she's bored, but she's also someone who has instantly definable characteristics with her pigtails that remind me of Junko and bright orange kimono that made her instantly recognisable that I think a lot of this cast don't have, which is what I mentioned before at the start with Akane. She's visually easy to pick out from a silhouette of the cast, and she would visually fit in quite well with the cast of one. She is very mean and picks on Mikan to an extent that I thought for sure someone else would have said something, but they really didn't. It's like a dynamic from a cartoon or something where the other characters just don't notice it. It just seemed like something that nobody paid attention to or even noticed besides Mikan. Or if they did notice it, they'd just see it and be like, "Ah, quit playing around." People say she's like this to Mikan because Hiyoko internalizes a lot of her defenselessness onto herself, but I really don't know where people get this from. Hiyoko doesn't like how Mikan acts because she assumes it's an act for attention. Hiyoko was also noted for how small she was before her huge growth spurt, so it may make her feel like she needs to act tough. Or simply, she's bullying the weakest person there to make herself feel better, like how she can't do her own kimono, which adds another layer to her. Also, her being small just seems like something that was used for a plot twist for the final chapter when you see her looking taller. When I first saw the image of her in the paper, I thought she grew up to be a teacher. It really threw me off. However, after chapter 2, we see her create a memorial to the one person that actually did open up to her, Mahiru. Even if the memorial is rather ghastly, she still did an act of kindness for her friend by her own choice. It shows something of a heart developing underneath that cold personality. Maybe she's the type of person that just needs someone to give her a chance. She gets upset easily anyway, as I've previously mentioned, but when people say it looks weird, she instantly gets upset. Remember I said earlier that one death in the game made me go, "Oh, that was a shame." Well, that was for Hiyoko. It gave me a similar reaction to seeing characters I liked from 1 die. I really thought it was a shame because of her starting to change, but also because it was a character I thought brought an interesting antagonistic dynamic to a group very early on that, in contrast to the first game, tried to get along. Other characters that I ended up warming up to died too, but at that point you could kind of tell they were on their way out. She's also very interesting because of the discussion around her. People say that she was killed during her redemption arc, and while I agree with that, that is just the nature of the series. The first rule of Danganronpa is to never get attached to anyone, but I also understand the importance of development, and for this reason they decided to keep Fuyuhiko alive because of what he went through, and not to turn him into a robot to diminish the emotional impact of him. But it's also a mistake with Hiyoko because she didn't need to die in chapter 3 especially. I don't think you're ever explicitly told why her behaviour is like this, but now I guess we'll never know. And if you want characters that are killed off during their development, then I suggest you give Chainsaw Man a read. This game's 5th trial also doesn't count as a real one to me because it just feels like a setup. It's kind of inorganic to get Chiaki out of the way, just so this game ends up having 5 survivors for some reason whereas the first one had 6. Maybe it's just to spice things up a bit. But she didn't need to die here just because chapter 3 needs to kill 2 people for some reason. 2 characters dying in chapter 3 of the first game was woven into the plot very well. This just felt like a very poor fumble and very sloppy. It honestly just felt like a mistake to kill her off. She didn't need to be there. All it does is throw confusion into an already messy chapter saved by the one character that Hiyoko picked on in the first place. The reveal of her death definitely makes your head spin because the area where she died is somewhere you leave and come back almost instantly. It's like one of those old shitbrick images from early meme internet where something in the image catches you off guard. Maybe it's karma for being so nasty to Mikan for no reason, but it's so much of an afterthought that her cause of death and murder weapon are never outrightly confirmed, only speculated. And not only that, but it never becomes the focus of the class trial at all. It's mentioned when setting things up, and that's about it until the end. I see a lot of people disliking Hiyoko, and I can't disagree more. She's one of the only people that has anything dynamic about her. She grabs your attention and has a lot going for her. Sometimes I forget she was my favourite for a very long time until Mikan swooped in on the very same chapter Hiyoko died and took the crown. Now that's karma for you. A very odd fumble of a character who could have very easily been a lot more.
Good, now I'm away from that annoying fucking bitch of a kid who I would have slapped in real fucking life if they talked to me like that. I would have fucking pimp slapped that shit out of that.
This is what my stats were after beating the game, and you can tell that only a few caught my attention. I already mentioned how fascinated I was with Hiyoko's meanness, so I had to find out more. I already mentioned from memory how I did all of her free time, and also, despite being very critical of Akane, I did find the supplemental information interesting, and I liked her enough on a surface level to talk to her more in the first place. I enjoyed Chiaki more near the end of the game, but at that point it was too late to progress anymore. And Fat Byakuya was the first one I immediately tried to get close with, but obviously he isn't around for long. And as you can see from the image, the rest of them I didn't do. You get the initial hope fragment for talking to them for the first time, and while progression may have halted because I may have bought the wrong type of gift, you can tell with so many of these that I didn't talk to them more than once. I did all the free time in the first game because I was on the Vita getting trophies, whereas I played this on my Switch and wrote the script immediately after finishing. I started playing 2 before 2x2 was even announced. Maybe they expect you to get the backstory and the characters you want through the free time because of the longer story, but like I said, leaving character growth to optional content is a poor choice. For a long time they're just comedic relief and friendly, so I found most of these people very uninteresting. And when I started to come around to some of them, there wasn't enough time to hang out. They usually died in that very chapter that they started to get good, and some of them don't even get that. The previous game built up characters as the story went on, not dying in the same chapter they started to get interesting. Fuyuhiko had plenty of natural growth in the main story, but I didn't feel the need to do his free time. And then on the flip side, for most of the runtime I couldn't stand Nagito. The game kills off everyone who is interesting way too early, and the other interesting ones you think are going to make it die right before the finish line. And the final survivors themselves, barring one, are okay to bland. So the main intrigue of the story itself was doing much of the heavy lifting, as well as keeping me going this time around. This game is longer than the first, but honestly not by that much. If anything, it feels like it needed some fat cut. Drawing out all of the development of these people over a longer time really did not help here, because they spend longer being boring, whilst they try to cram it all in during the trial, and some people get nothing at all. I don't doubt that some of these free time events are good, and I've heard hints of deeper things, as well as the opposite, but don't hide it all away to optional free time modes that people may never even see. Some people may see it as a reward, but I see it as missed opportunity. Even characters that died early in the first game like Sakura and Mondo at least had scenes that rounded out their characters and showed depth in their limited screen time. Sakura managed to flip a cliche trope on its head, and she died in the first chapter, whereas this time around people like Ibuki die and it's just kind of like, oh okay. If it wasn't for the fact that I started writing this the moment after I finished the game, I know I would have forgotten most of these people's names, whereas I remembered them all from the first game very easily. There's 2 categories in this game for bad characters, those who are poor in-universe and those out of universe. So basically, those who are just bad characters because of how they're written in general, and others because of real-world choices. Characters like Akane, Hajime, Sonia and Kazuichi are just poorly written, whereas characters like Nekomaru would have been fine if he didn't seemingly get written out of the story for a whole chapter for no reason. I feel like I've been much more optimistic and objective in my critique given how I think the cast is very poor overall, but I suppose the proof is in the image. The main survivors are most of the problem anyway, and also just yelling for an hour would get old. This isn't 2008 anymore. So the too long didn't read of these characters are as follows.
Fuyuhiko Kuzuryu.
An actual decent, well-rounded character with an arc.
Akane Owari.
A bit of fun, but a walking sex joke that never learns a lesson.
Hajime Hinata.
A boring, passive observer in his own game.
Sonia Nevermind.
A single joke that's run right into the ground.
Kazuichi Soda.
Creepy simp.
Nagito Komaeda.
As odd as it might be to say, he is too well written, has way too much focus in the story, and shows the entire cast up.
Chiaki Nanami.
A love interest that didn't get developed upon, with her plot reveal adding nothing. Most people I know like her until they get to the end game and realise she wasn't given much to do. A pleasant character to be around, but like I said earlier, done dirty by the story twice over.
Gundham Tanaka.
Very funny, but just kinda exists, which isn't the most offensive thing in this cast, and he beats the final dead room with his magic dark davers.
Pekoyama.
I may LARP Pico a lot with my friends, and I want to like her, but her role is that of the lesser half of a duo, and sadly, just used as a plot device. Pico also just sounds better.
Ibuki Miota!
Yeah, okay, shut up. Lol Random XD. It was a different time, and I'm usually fine with it, but she really doesn't add much to the story at all.
Nekomaru Nidai!
A likeable, if not too deep, character to be around. You'd think he'd be the one to rally everyone together because of his talent. He deserved to be treated better, both from his classmates and the writers, because he's written out of the story due to impulsiveness of someone else for no reason, and then dies anyway.
TeruTeru Hanamura.
A gag character, but also kinda based in his own right. Let's hope for a 2x2 redemption arc.
Mikan Sumiki.
An excellently written, tragic character that subverts expectations and is a commentary on tropes, while still having a wealth of unused potential.
Mahiru Koizumi.
Very unique personality, but painfully underused.
Byakuya Togami.
Huge wasted potential, but clever that he chose to imitate Byakuya.
Hiyoko Sayanji.
Instantly antagonistic, which stands out amongst everyone else. An excellent character cut short, which is undoubtedly a huge mistake. I really did not think they'd end up equal like that, or even fit. Tsugami is unironically too fat. Nagito is most likely the best because of how well he's written, but I find it funny because we all say how annoying he is the entire runtime. And the worst character is easily Kazuichi. Need I say more? And my top 3 favourites are Chiaki, Hiyoko, and Mikan. And also an honourable mention of the best boy Chihiro Fujisaki from Danganronpa 1. In this game, at first, I thought there was going to be some reveal at the end that all these characters were copies in a simulation of the first game, and while part of that is correct, the characters having similar faces is just due to the art style. I thought Mahiru was going to be an Ikusaba reference because of the freckles. Even though I said I liked her red hair, it felt like it was a Lego piece disguising the real hair underneath. Or Hiyoko seeming like another variation of a Junko character. Or Mikan's hair reminding me of Toko. Or Sonia being Temu Sakaya. Or Akane and Nekomaru being an obvious redo of Asahino and Sakura. As well as Nekomaru being the one of the cast to come back as a machine. However, he was still in play for the killing game, and Alter Ego was not. Also, Chiaki and Chihiro share similar poses in their artwork because of their relation. And I'm sure I don't need to mention the very obvious similarities between Nagito and Makoto sharing the same voice actor, to the point where Nagito Komaeda literally translates to an anagram saying, "I am Makoto Naegi." I always thought Nagito was a unique name, well, now I know why. As well as the other things like him being a suspect on chapter 1, even if Nagito is always the suspect, and having the same talent with similar clothes and hair layout, as well as some shared sprite poses. He seems like a cosplayer. But this was ultimately not the case. I think the game would have exploded if Nagito and Makoto met at the end. Another wasted opportunity. I really didn't like him throughout the runtime, and for sure thought I would rant and rave about him in this video, but as I've stated, he's clearly where all the effort went. The game at least did that right. And once again, Nagito gets his own focus section. Unbelievable. I wasn't really a fan of seemingly every suspect going lead crazy after they were caught. Celeste losing her cool in the first game was a shock to see because it really didn't seem like something she would do. She does it one time before the trial and it really shocks you, and by the time it happens again, there's already been a big enough gap. But seeing the majority of the characters do it here lost its impact. TeruTeru lost his facade of being a dignified chef to having a thick southern accent and more blatantly aggressive dialogue. Pico had her small little crazy smile for when she pretended to be the sparkling justice, and Mikan just caved into her ultimate despair memories and stopped trying to hide it. And Gundham was always a weirdo, but he seemed to elongate the trial far beyond any reason it needed to be. That whole scenario was kind of odd when compared to the 3 before it. Because of the ultimate imposter bringing everyone together as a group early on, nobody really forms any close bonds with each other, and they just blame Nagito for a decent length of time. Which is completely understandable, I would too. They also all needed to be more intensely manipulated into killing each other than in the first game. Also, in the first game, they weren't all on the same page to begin with. Byakuya and Toko form a duo, Kyoko's off doing her own thing, and other characters like Mondo and Hiro just show up to breakfast whenever they felt like it. Byakuya, for example, doesn't care about anyone else, and says he'd easily kill to escape. And then they get manipulated with tapes of the outside world, their secrets, and money, for example. They're all very personal reasons. It plays into the original title of this game being Distrust, but that's another topic for another day. Even if their personal secrets never came up again. In the second game, I think they would have held out a lot longer before they started to kill each other because of their bond, and I think the motives reflect this. Monokuma outright tells them their memories have been stolen. The despair disease would have kept everyone isolated forever, and they all would have starved to death in the house. Not to mention the whole Twilight Syndrome case unravelled a lot of dark history. Starving to death and killing a classmate for monetary reward is completely different. Everyone could have just rejected the money and nothing bad would have happened. But let's be real, that would never happen. People are too greedy and Junko would have gotten bored. As mentioned, I don't think that the pairings between the characters here that do exist are very good at all. Pico and Fuyuhiko have history, so they're fine, and then remembering their old life does make sense because it's only school memories that were lost. I'd love to see more of them. It's a pretty unique setup. Akane and Nekomaru just annoyed me because Akane never listened to Nekomaru or learned from her actions because she made the same mistakes to the point where he was almost done with her and had to have his body repaired with a robot because of her mistake, which she immediately does again. Their interactions start off fine, and at least their mutually compatible talents is what brought them together in the first place. Sonia and Gundham don't count because he never acknowledges her. Sonia and Kazuichi don't count because it's one joke repeated and she just doesn't like him. And as I said before, it's just kinda sad. Kazuichi and Hajime comes into being almost as fast as it gets dropped. Hajime and Chiaki don't count because they don't spend nearly enough meaningful time together. And Hiyoko and Mahiru just kind of came to be because of a couple lines of dialogue, and as I've mentioned, they get shipped together pretty intensely. And given the lack of other pairings in this game, it's really not hard to see why. Besides these three pairings, can you name any? Am I missing anything? It's not like in the first game where you have duos and interesting dynamics. Like I said before, Byakuya and Toko have a toxic but mutually beneficial relationship where she gets to be with him and he uses her for tasks, or Celeste similarly using Hifumi in the same way, or how Mondo and Taka bond over their intense rivalry, which is very realistic, and how I formed some of my closest friendships too. And while it ended poorly, Mondo's time with Chihiro showed a different side to his tough exterior, that he was going to help someone out, as well as this just showing two characters actually interacting separately from everyone else. It's a unique dynamic, and I wish it would have worked out. Or Sakura and Asahina, as I've mentioned before. They start off just cooking together, but end up becoming true friends by the end that listen and care for one another. Or how Sakaya used her past experiences with Makoto to get close to him to use him as bait in the first case. May not be an example of true friendship, but it's still unique, especially for the opening act. It throws the whole game on its head even more so, after it seems like it will go down the very obvious route of making the main character get the high school friend love interest. I still think it's pretty impressive. Or Hiyoko and Makoto bonding over the case, but also growing to care about each other as time goes on, as well as respect each other. She also knows he's innocent, but isn't above using him as bait. Poor guy can't catch a break. But on the flip side, nearly dies trying to save him from the pit at the bottom of the school. Or Hifumi and Taka fighting over their husbando AI. Even Byakuya by the end of the game has to begrudgingly admit that Makoto did do a good job. People could say I'm comparing both games a lot, but I don't think it's out of the realm of acceptability to compare a direct sequel with the game that came before it, especially when it does some stuff better. Perhaps this is why 2x2 exists. The game has very obvious problems that could have come to be for various reasons, and now they're changing it. It's like Spike realised that what if scenarios are a popular subgenre, and immediately decided to make a whole new game of it. I really hope basically everyone besides Nagito gets some justice this time around, or else it's gonna feel pointless. I think overall though, in canon, it just seems kind of cruel that all the characters from this game actually survived because it was a simulation, whereas the characters from the first game that died just stayed dead. People wondered if you died in the game, you died in real life, but as we can see, that isn't true. If you're gonna keep the cast alive after spending 30 to 40 hours thinking they were being killed, the least you could do was bring the others back too. That, or just don't bring anyone back. Obviously Chiaki doesn't come back, sadly. I suppose the fact that at least one class survived is supposed to be bittersweet. I think the anime introduces some other issues by making the world even bigger. Junko changing the world so much with her ultimate and having all that power, whereas nobody else has really had any impact besides the character created for the anime. Or how the world goes to hell for a silly reason. Also rehabilitating the people that caused all the issues instead of just, I don't know, killing them, also seems a bit far-fetched. However, that's kind of a game issue too. I know it's supposed to show the power of hope and redemption for something that wasn't their fault and fit into the overarching theme of the series, but I digress. I'm probably thinking about it too much. Yes, I said I wouldn't talk about the anime or free time in this video, and besides a couple comments here and there, it was either to make a joke or to directly reference the game in a general sense. However, the anime would probably need its own video. The many mistakes of the Danganronpa 3 anime? Ha ha ha, no. But I didn't do a story analysis because this video isn't about that, and I mentioned what was relevant, but overall I did like it. I still think the first game is better though because it's tighter, more focused, claustrophobic, serious, tense, and has you in suspense the whole time. It's more grounded, which makes the outlandish moments stick out more. However, the second game really does reward you for sticking with it. Hajime may seem like a glaring blank slate, but there was always the allure of finding out that there had to be more. I was scratching my head for much of the game, and didn't really get the same vibes as the first game until we got to the Strawberry and Grape House, so I kind of felt let down for a good chunk of time. But after finishing the game, every single complaint or question I had about why it felt so different was honestly answered, and it's quite impressive. There's a reason why it's on a tropical island. There's a reason why things feel so similar. Monokuma seems to interfere more this time than in the last game, but that's explained too, and so on. Even the subtitle Goodbye Despair makes sense. I was really perplexed, especially in the fake out happy intro, and it kept up that act for a while too. Good job. Upon looking at the game again, Nagito glitching and the game having a boot screen really are a hiding in plain sight moment. It's something we notice, but forget about by the end game because it's been so long until it comes around again. I've been told that this is where the series got more unhinged, but then that V3 reins it in a bit, so I don't know what to believe. I even wonder if this game was planned from the start because of the backing vocals of a song in both games, referring to a countdown, and we do have one happen in this game.
So how's about we put 8 hours on the clock and start that thing from now?
I've heard the opposite, but to me the cases were also better at making the culprit not so obvious. A few times I was stumped because who I thought it was seemed too obvious, and then other times I had no clue, especially in chapter 3. I didn't want to believe Mikan did it, even if it should have been obvious after a while. I think the individual talents could have been used a bit better. Some got more focused than others. The characters are memorable in the eyes of fans though because I constantly see memes of 1 and 2 characters, but none from V3 or the anime, despite them being newer. From V3 I only see anything about these two. Not to be morbid, but the only death that felt grounded and horrifying was Leon's death in the first game. It's very brutal, and all of the characters are there to see it. Now, I attribute this to being a holdover from the early build of Distrust, but even the other deaths in the first game don't hit as hard as that. Even the principal in the rocket seems abstract compared to Leon. The death of Alter Ego shocks you, and the lead up to Makoto's execution is suspenseful though. But then you go well off the deep end here with Mikan being on a rocket needle leg spaceship or whatever, and TeruTeru being deep fried in a volcano. Like, what? At least it's thematic, I guess, in the theme of it being like the first game with TeruTeru being pulled back with a chain and he's good with food. Gundham, Pico and Chiaki's are okay though. At least these outlandish deaths in this game can be attributed to the fact that it's a simulation. I thought the game was very odd at first, and still do think it's a bit all over the place. But after finishing it, and taking way too long to write this, I've come to appreciate it more. The culture shock of the environment being totally different reminded me of JoJo Part 3 actually, but it all makes sense in the end. It says a lot that I felt motivated enough to make something like this in the first place. The idea was to rant about the final survivors, but it expanded. We all want to see the things we love get better. For my final group I would have Fuyuhiko, Mahiru, Nagito, Chiaki, Hiyoko and Mikan. But considering Hajime is the main character, I suppose he has to be in here too. Either way, there's so much more potential with better characters that died than the ones who lived in this game. This isn't a prediction for 2x2, but more of my fanfic. I reckon they'll throw some curveballs in though, like whatever's going on with Nagito's new shirt design. Looks more rigid. Copyright issues? Could be something, could be nothing. Imagine if Tugami dies first again. Or TeruTeru is a feminist now. I'm more interested to see what they can do with this, as opposed to a what if remake of 1. It's just a very unique series that reminds me of why I enjoy video games in the first place. If there's anyone still around, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. No doubt I got some comments here wrong, but I started writing this the day after I finished it on a plane in October 2025, all from memory, and I've been working on it ever since. So it's been a while clearly. My brain will forever be full of lore. Started getting images of Hiyoko in January, and finalised the script in March. I spent way more time writing about it than I actually did playing it. The original idea was to have about 2 paragraphs for each character like I did with Fuyuhiko, but that clearly didn't happen. I'd love to talk about it with you in the comments. Thanks again. This has been my biggest project yet, and I'm really happy. I wanted to put in maximum effort. Editing the 3-minute section of the in and out of universe took 5 hours. Maybe I need to go see their free time modes now, like I did with 1. Let's hope 2x2 gives justice to the characters that need it. Seems kinda weird to remake a sequel that's very heavily reliant on knowledge of the first game, but you know, maybe there's a reason for that. Now, I'm off to play V3.